I came to my daughter's wedding in a navy suit I had bought 3 days earlier, with a card in my inside pocket and a $75,000 wire sitting in my bank app, waiting for one last authorization. The venue sat outside Columbus, all pale stone, clipped hedges, and glass doors polished clean. Emily stood near the arch in her white dress, holding her bouquet too tightly. For 1 second, I forgot the seating chart, the strange calls, the way Mark had been pushing me about the wire since breakfast. She was my daughter. I saw the little girl who used to sit on my toolbox and ask why wires had colors. I saw the teenager I drove to appointments before work. Then her eyes moved past my shoulder, not to me. The DJ had just said, "And now maybe a few words from the father of the bride." I had stood because that was what fathers did. I had one small card, 3 lines, no lecture, no embarrassment, no story about money, just a blessing. Emily crossed the floor fast enough that the bottom of her dress whispered over the tile. "Dad," she said under the music, "you should leave." I looked at her, waiting for the rest of the sentence. "You should leave this side of the room." "You should leave the card with me. You should leave it for later." Anything but what her face was already saying. "Em, what are you talking about?" Her fingers tightened around the bouquet until the stems bent. "Please, not right now." 2 men in black suits were already behind her. I had seen them at the entrance and thought they were there for parking trouble or drunk cousins. Now one looked over Emily's shoulder toward Mark. Mark Whitman did not come to me. He stood by the head table with one hand on the back of Emily's chair, his jaw tight, his smile still arranged for the room. His mother, Karen, sat beside him in a champagne-colored dress, napkin near her mouth, watching like this was a spill the staff needed to handle. "Emily," I said, "I'm your father." Her eyes filled, but she did not step back. "Dad, don't make this harder." That phrase landed wrong. Harder for whom? For the bride looking at the man who raised her? For the groom who had been texting me since 7:30 about a wire deadline? The guard on my left kept his voice low. "Sir, let's step outside." I could have raised my voice. I could have asked the whole room if they knew what was happening. I could have made myself the kind of man they were already preparing to describe. Instead, I looked at Mark. He gave one small nod. That was the moment I understood this was not Emily panicking. This had been decided before I stood up. I put the card back in my pocket. My hand brushed the envelope with the check for the card box, then my phone. I did not touch either one. "All right," I said. The guard's fingers closed around my elbow. Not hard. That almost made it worse. He handled me like a vase marked for removal before the guests arrived. The room turned in pieces. A woman stopped with her fork halfway up. One of Mark's cousins whispered, "Is that her dad?" Nancy, my sister, pushed back her chair, but I shook my head once. If she came after me, Karen would get the scene she wanted. The DJ faded the music down, panicked, and brought it back too loud. Emily stayed near the arch, her mouth open like she wanted to say something and had lost permission. At the ballroom doors, Susan Parker, the venue manager, stepped out from behind the host stand. She was a square-shouldered woman in a black suit with a headset at her collar. Earlier, she had asked if the seating chart had been changed by the family. I had thought it was a mistake. Now her face told me she had known it was not. "Mr. Miller," she said quietly, "it's all right." It was not all right, but I had no better sentence. The guard let go of my elbow once we reached the lobby. One of them looked embarrassed. "Sorry, sir. You were doing your job." I sat on a bench near the coat room. Behind the ballroom doors, the wedding went on schedule. That was the part that hurt. Nothing collapsed without me. The flowers still stood, the DJ still talked, dinner still moved. A father could be removed, and the schedule could continue. My phone was heavy in my pocket. I opened the bank app because my hands knew where to go before my mind caught up. The transfer was still there as a saved wire. $75,000, recipient line shortened, purpose note clipped after earnest funds per agreement. Mark had sent the routing details that morning with the words, "Timing matters today." I had not authorized it. I had learned that from 40 years of electrical work and invoices. Nothing expensive moved until the breaker, the load, and the name on the order matched. The app asked whether I wanted to continue or cancel the pending wire. I looked at the ballroom doors. Behind them, Emily's wedding kept breathing without me. I tapped cancel. The app asked, "Are you sure?" I tapped it again. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the wire moved out of pending authorization and back into my available balance. I took a screenshot.
Habit, mostly. When something goes wrong on a job, you take a picture before anybody moves the ladder. Susan stood a few feet away, pretending to review a clipboard so she would not be staring at me. "Do you need a ride?" she asked. I drove. "Maybe wait a few minutes." I almost laughed. It was the first kind sentence anyone from that building had given me all day. "I can wait." Outside, the air smelled like cut grass and perfume drifting through the doors. I walked to my truck, sat behind the wheel, and closed myself in. A white ribbon on a limo mirror lifted in the breeze, then fell. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Mark Whitman. I let it ring until the last second, then answered. "Robert, what happened to the wire?" he asked. His voice was tight enough to crack. In the background, I heard music, then a door closing, then his breathing. "Did you cancel it?" Not, "Where are you?" Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Emily is upset." The wire. "I canceled it," I said. "You need to put it back through, right now." I looked through the windshield at the venue doors. A bridesmaid came outside laughing with a champagne flute, saw my truck, and turned away. "Mark, security just walked me out of my daughter's wedding." "That was a misunderstanding," he said fast. "Emily got overwhelmed. Mom was trying to keep the day smooth." "Your mother needed security to keep the day smooth. Please don't do this tonight." There it was again. Don't be difficult. Don't make it awkward. Don't embarrass Emily. I had been useful for deposits, repairs, the photographer overage, and now a wire. But the minute I stood to bless my daughter, I became the problem. "Let me talk to Emily," I said. Silence answered first. Then Mark said, "She's busy." "At her wedding?" "Robert, listen to me. If that wire doesn't land, a lot of things get complicated. For the house? For us. The word us should have included my daughter. It did not sound like it did. Then Emily can call me and tell me she wants my money but not me in the room." He swore under his breath, too low for a guest to hear, and I knew the real wedding had just begun. To understand why I did not authorize that wire before the ceremony, I have to go back to the week before the wedding. The first warning came a week before the wedding, at my kitchen table, when Emily pushed away the grilled cheese I had made and asked me not to talk about work. She had stopped by after closing at the salon, still in her black client blouse, phone face down beside her plate. "Dad, don't get mad," she said, which meant she had already decided I had a reason to be mad. I told her to say it. "Mark's family is different," she said. "His mom invited people from their club, his boss, a couple of real estate people. She just wants everything to feel polished." "And I don't polish up?" I asked. Emily rubbed her thumb along the plate edge instead of looking at me. "Maybe don't get into job stories. Panels, permits, contractors, that kind of thing. You know how you can sound." I knew how I sounded. I sounded like a man who had paid a mortgage with service calls, emergency rewires, and nights sleeping with one ear open because a customer might lose heat. I owned Miller Electric because I built it, not because somebody gave me a clean office and a logo. "Your fiancé knows what I do," I said. "I know. It's just one day." One day was how small pressure entered a house. Don't talk about work for one day. Sit at the far table for one meal. Wait on the toast for one schedule change. Send the money before the paperwork for one deadline. I did not know yet that all four were already connected. The money came up 2 nights later at a restaurant Karen chose because the lighting is forgiving for family pictures. Mark wore a gray sport coat and talked to the waiter by name. Karen asked Emily about flowers, then turned to me with a smile that had no room for an answer. "Robert, Emily says you're helping with the first home fund," she said. "I said I would help," I answered. "Once I see the purchase agreement." Mark put down his glass. "It's not exactly the purchase agreement yet.
It's earnest money tied to another seller's contract. Pretty common in this market. I had wired deposits for commercial jobs, paid inspectors, and chased enough dishonest contractors to know that pretty common was not a document. Send me what you have. Of course, Mark said, but his hand tightened around the glass. Karen laughed softly. Robert is careful. That's a good thing. Men who work with their hands understand details.
The sentence was wrapped like a compliment and delivered like a receipt. Emily heard it too. I saw color rise in her neck. Mark leaned closer. The issue is timing. The seller's side wants confirmation by Saturday morning. If we miss it, we may lose the unit. Saturday is the wedding. Exactly, he said. It would be one less thing for Emily to worry about. Emily looked at me then, not as a woman asking for a business decision, but as my daughter asking me to make her life easier. That look had moved me for years. Mark had learned it fast. The PDF arrived the next morning. It was not a purchase agreement. It was a wire instruction sheet with a name I did not know. Alan Mercer. The note field said earnest funds per agreement, but there was no agreement attached, no address, no closing company, no title letter. I called Mark from my shop office while two of my guys loaded conduit into the van. Who is Alan Mercer? I asked. He controls the assignment, Mark said. It's normal. I told you the unit is moving fast. Send the agreement. I'll get it to you. That was not an answer. It was a hallway with a door at the end. I saved the wire as a draft anyway, because Emily had already called twice and asked if I was making this harder than it needed to be. After work, I took the blue folder from the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside were the deed, insurance papers, and lease file for a small condo near the community college. I had bought it years earlier, after Emily graduated, thinking one day I might put it in her name if she needed a landing place. I had never told her. Maybe that was my mistake too. I had treated help like a surprise I could unveil when life got hard, instead of a conversation we should have had while life was normal. I put the folder back without moving a page. For the wedding, I would help with money, not property, and even the money would wait for the last button. 3 days before the wedding, Susan Parker called from the venue. I was on a ladder in a dentist's office, replacing a bad ballast when her number came through. Mr. Miller, I wanted to confirm the reception seating, she said. The latest chart has you at table 8, near the side wall. Is that correct? I climbed down one rung and pressed the phone tighter to my ear. I'm the father of the bride. There was a pause. That's why I'm calling. I asked where the parents were seated. She did not want to answer, which was an answer of its own. Mark's parents were near the head table. So were Karen's brother and a man listed only as guest of Groom. And the toast? I asked. Another pause. The DJ timeline I received doesn't include a father of the bride toast. Sometimes families choose to keep speeches short. I didn't choose that. Susan lowered her voice. Then you may want to speak with Emily directly. I don't want to create trouble. I just don't like surprises at weddings. I thanked her, stood in the empty exam room with a dead light fixture over my head, and called my daughter. Emily did not answer. Mark texted 2 minutes later. Busy with final appointment. What's up? I wrote, seating chart changed, toast removed, need to talk to Emily. He answered, Mom is just streamlining, don't take it personally. That was the first time I saw the whole shape and still pretended it was only a shadow. On the morning of the wedding, I shaved twice because my hands kept missing spots. The suit felt stiff, but Emily had asked for, formal dad, really formal, and I wanted one less thing for her to explain. At 7:30, Mark texted, Morning, Robert. Please send the wire before ceremony if possible. Mercer needs confirmation. No good morning. No see you soon. Mercer needs confirmation. I answered, After ceremony, once I see the agreement. He replied so fast I knew he had been waiting with the phone in his hand. That may be too late. This is for Emily. I looked at the blue folder in my desk drawer, then at the bank app on my phone. The wire draft was ready, but the final authorization screen still waited for my thumbprint. That small pause was the only adult in the room.
Emily called while I was tying my tie. Her voice sounded thin and busy. "Dad, can you please not argue with Mark today?" I asked for a document. "He said he'll handle it." "Then he can handle sending it." She went quiet. In the background, a woman laughed. Karen, probably. Then Emily said, "I just want one beautiful day." I should have told her a beautiful day cannot be built on a hidden wire and a father moved to the side wall. Instead, I softened, because that is what I had trained myself to do. "I'll be there," I said. "Thank you." Before I left, I checked the wire one more time and did not authorize it. The money stayed where I could still stop it. The card went into my pocket. The old condo folder stayed in the drawer. I locked the house and drove to the venue, believing restraint would protect my daughter from embarrassment. By the end of the night, restraint was the only thing that protected me. I arrived before most guests because I have never trusted parking lots on wedding days. Contractors show up early. If something goes wrong, early gives you options. The lobby smelled like flowers, floor polish, and expensive coffee. A white sign pointed guests toward the ballroom, and beside it stood the seating chart in a gold frame. I found my name after a minute. Robert Miller. Table 8. Table 8 sat near a side wall, half behind a column, with two cousins from Mark's family and a couple I had never met. The head table listed Karen and her husband beside Emily and Mark. A card for special guest sat where the father of the bride would normally be. Susan Parker crossed the lobby when she saw me reading. "Mr. Miller," she said, "I tried to clarify." "And?" She looked toward the ballroom doors. "I was told this was approved by the family." "Which family?" Susan did not answer. She did not have to. Her silence had more respect in it than Karen's compliments. I walked into the ballroom and checked the column panel without thinking. Loose at the bottom. Even then, I wanted to fix what was pulling away. Mark saw me from the head table and lifted two fingers in a greeting that did not invite me closer. Karen gave me a small smile, then turned back to the florist. Emily was in another room with her bridesmaids. I told myself that if I could just see her, the day would straighten out. That was the lie I brought in with the card. The ceremony went by in flashes. Emily's hand on Mark's sleeve, the officiant talking about partnership, Karen crying for the photographer. I stood in the second row where an usher pointed me. Nobody asked me to walk Emily down the aisle. Mark had said they wanted it modern and simple. At the reception, I sat at table 8 while the room filled around me. Nancy came over, kissed my cheek and whispered, "Why are you way over here?" "Ask the people with the chart," I said. She looked toward Karen and said nothing, which meant she understood more than I wished she did. The DJ introduced Mark's father first, then Karen. She stood with a glass of champagne and said, "In our family, we believe in grace, presentation, and knowing how to carry yourself." Several guests smiled. Emily watched Karen like a student waiting for a grade. Karen welcomed Emily into a family that values standards. She never said my name. She did not have to. I was beside the column, already edited out. 20 minutes later, Mark came to my table. He bent low enough to look respectful to anyone watching. "Robert, did the wire clear?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. His smile stayed on. His eyes did not. "We need it before dinner service ends. Mercer is waiting." "Then send the agreement," I said. "Tonight isn't the time for distrust," he said. "Funny, I thought tonight was the time for family," I said. He straightened, still smiling for the room, and went back to Emily. Dinner plates went out. The photographer moved people like furniture. I watched Emily laugh at something Karen said, and wondered if she knew she had started holding her shoulders the same way, high and careful, like a woman wearing somebody else's coat. Then the DJ made his mistake. "All right," he said into the microphone, reading from a tablet. "Before the first dance, we have a few words from the father of the bride. Robert Miller?" For one clean second, the room gave me back my name. Nancy turned toward me. Susan, near the doors, looked up sharply. I took the card from my pocket and stood. Mark moved first. He crossed 2 steps toward the DJ, still wearing his groom smile. Karen leaned in from the other side, one hand on the DJ's arm. The music bed kept playing under the silence. Emily looked at me from the head table. Her face did not say surprise. It said fear. I had only reached the space between tables when she came toward me. Her dress brushed chair legs. Guests turned their heads the way people do when they feel a mistake becoming entertainment. "Dad," she said, low enough that the microphone would not catch it. "You should leave." I was asked to give a toast. "Please don't." "Don't what?" She swallowed and glanced at Mark. "Don't make it about you." Those 5 words did more damage than the 2 guards already stepping away from the wall. One guard stopped at my left. The other stayed behind Emily, waiting for Mark's signal. I saw it this time. Mark looked at Karen. Karen gave the smallest tilt of her chin, and Mark nodded. "Sir," the guard said, "let's step outside." Nancy stood up so fast her chair hit the table behind her. I raised one hand toward her, not in surrender, but in instruction. Stay. Watch. If I argued, Karen would have the version she wanted before dessert. Robert made a scene. Robert upset the bride. Robert had to be removed. I had wired enough buildings to know when a trap had already been energized. "I came to bless my daughter," I said. Emily's eyes filled. "Then don't ruin this." The guard touched my elbow. I let him. The card stayed in my hand until I realized guests could see it. Then I folded it once and put it back in my pocket. That small motion made a woman at table 4 look down at her plate. As we passed the DJ, he whispered, "I'm sorry, sir." I did not answer. He was reading the wrong timeline. That was not his crime. At the doors, I turned once. Emily stood in the open space between tables, Mark behind her, Karen already speaking to 2 older women with a sad, controlled face. Susan watched from the host stand, lips pressed flat. The doors closed behind me. The music dipped, then rose again. That sound became the proof I carried in my body. They had not lost a wedding. They had only lost a wallet. In the lobby, Susan stepped toward me and stopped herself, like she had remembered the cameras above the coat room. "Mr. Miller, I am so sorry," she said. "Who gave the security instruction?" She looked toward the ballroom doors. "I can't discuss a client's event while it's active." "That means there is an instruction." Her jaw moved once. "There is a note in the event file." That was enough. I did not ask her to risk more in the middle of a paid reception. I sat on the bench, opened the bank app, and canceled the wire before my anger could turn into pleading. The screenshot saved with the time in the corner, 7:42 p.m. At 7:53, Mark called. I did not know yet that Nancy had stayed inside and heard Karen telling guests I had become confused and emotional. I did not know Susan would be written up before Monday. I did not know Alan Mercer's name would matter more than any apartment listing. All I knew was that the groom's first sentence was about the wire. When I ended the call, I did not start the truck. I sat in the parking lot until the steering wheel stopped feeling slippery under my hands. Then I texted Nancy. "Stay if you can. Listen, don't argue." She answered, "I saw enough." I wrote back, "I need more than enough." Across the lot, the ballroom windows glowed warm and gold. The reception kept moving, full of people who would later swear they had not understood. Maybe some hadn't. Maybe some had looked away because weddings teach guests to protect the picture. I put the phone on the passenger seat and finally drove home with the card still folded in my pocket. Nancy called before I reached home. "Don't hang up," she said. "I'm in the ladies' room." I pulled into a gas station lot and parked under a light that made the windshield look dirty. "What happened?" "Karen is telling people you got emotional and confused. Her word, Bob, confused. She said Emily was afraid you'd turn the toast into a lecture about money." There are words families use because they are too polite to sound like weapons. Confused was one of them. At 63, with gray hair and a business my daughter had grown up around, I knew exactly where that word could go if someone pushed it hard enough. Did Emily hear? She heard part of it. Mark kept her moving for photos. Nancy lowered her voice. Water ran in the background. Somebody opened a door, then left. I watched the whole thing. You stood up when the DJ called you. Emily came over. Security moved after Mark looked at Karen. You did not yell. Can you text me that? Now? Now. She went quiet for 15 seconds. My phone buzzed with her message while she was still on the line. I saw Robert stand only after the DJ called him for the father of the bride toast. He did not yell or touch anyone. Security removed him after Mark/Karen intervened. I saved the text and took a screenshot. It felt cold, doing that with my sister's voice shaking in my ear, but cold was better than helpless. Stay if you can, I said. Listen for the money. Bob, this is your daughter's wedding. No, I said. Right now it's Mark's cover story. By the time I got home, Mark had called 4 more times. Karen had called once from Emily's phone. I let both go to voicemail and stood in my kitchen with the lights off, listening to the refrigerator hum like nothing had happened. Mark's first voicemail was controlled. Robert, we need to talk like adults. The wire issue is time-sensitive. The second had less polish. You are putting Emily in a terrible position over a misunderstanding. Karen's message came third, using my daughter's number. Robert, this is Karen. Emily is very upset. Please don't punish her because tonight became uncomfortable. Families recover by showing grace. Grace, in Karen's mouth, meant I should pay quietly and accept the story she had already started telling. I texted Emily, I am home. I will talk to you directly, not through Mark, not through Karen. The message showed delivered but not read. At 11:18, Mark texted, You don't understand the exposure you're creating. I answered, Send the agreement for the wire. He wrote, This is not the time. I wrote, Then it is not the time for my money. No reply came for 8 minutes. Then a photo appeared, not a contract. A cropped screenshot of an email subject line. Mercer confirmation due today. Under it, Mark wrote, This is what you are risking for your daughter. I saved that too. He thought the subject line would scare me. Instead, it gave me a name, a deadline, and proof that the wire was about more than a newlywed home. At midnight, Susan texted from a number I did not know. This is Susan Parker from the venue. Please do not reply if this puts you in a difficult position. I wanted you to know the incident note says, Guest removed per client request before unscheduled toast. I am sorry. I stared at the words client request. Not safety, not disturbance. Request. I replied, Thank you. Do not send anything you shouldn't. She wrote back, I already said too much. But I watched you leave quietly. That message cost her. I knew it before the cost arrived. People like Karen never punished the man who paid the invoice first. They punished the employee who let the record show what happened. I put Susan's number under her name and made one more screenshot. Then I opened Mark's PDF again and searched Alan Mercer. The name appeared only on the wire instructions, nowhere in the home listing Mark had once shown me on his phone. The listing itself was gone from the link. Page not found. I sent Mark one line. The listing link is dead. Send the full agreement by noon tomorrow. This time his answer came as a voicemail. Robert, stop digging around things you don't understand. That was the first honest sentence he had given me all night. Sunday morning brought the family chat. Karen did not write first. She was smarter than that. A cousin of Mark's posted, Hope everyone gives the newlyweds peace after last night's stress. Weddings are emotional. Another person added a heart. Then someone wrote, Poor Emily. Nancy sent me screenshots before I even opened the chat. Under one of them she wrote, They are making you the weather, not the storm. At 9:06, Emily finally called. I answered on the first ring because anger had not killed the father in me. Dad, why are you doing this? She asked. I sat at the kitchen table where she had pushed away grilled cheese a week earlier. Doing what? Mark says the money being held up is going to cost us. Karen says you left angry and now you're punishing me. Emily, I was removed. You stood up when everyone was watching. The DJ called my name. She breathed hard. You know how Mark's mom is. She gets anxious about events. You could have waited. There it was. The bridge from their story into her mouth. I closed my eyes once, then opened them and read Nancy's text on the screen. Your aunt saw it, I said. Susan at the venue saw it. There is an event note. Why are you collecting evidence against my wedding? Because your wedding collected security against me. She went silent, and I knew the sentence had landed somewhere she was not ready to look. If you loved me, Emily said, you wouldn't make this harder. I almost answered the old way. I almost said, fine, send the paperwork, I'll help. Let's calm everyone down. That was the reflex Mark had counted on and Karen had polished for him. Instead, I said, if he loved you, he would have asked where I was before he asked where the money was. She hung up. For 10 minutes, I did nothing. Then I made a folder on my laptop. Wedding wire. I put in the bank screenshot, Nancy's text, Mark's cropped Mercer email, Susan's message, and my own note of the call times. It was not a lawsuit. It was a railing. Something to hold while people tried to move the floor. At 11:47, an unknown number called. Mr. Miller? A man asked. This is Alan Mercer. I understand there may be confusion about the funds Mark Whitman represented. Represented. Not requested. Not hoped for. What funds? $75,000 scheduled for confirmation yesterday. For my daughter's home? Mercer paused. You should ask Mark what agreement he attached your funds to. I asked. He didn't send it. Then I suggest you keep the funds where they are until he does. The call lasted less than 2 minutes, but it changed the room. Mark was no longer a nervous groom with a pushy mother. He was a man who had put my daughter's wedding, my money, and somebody else's deadline on the same table. I looked at the folder name on my laptop and added one more word. Wedding Wire Mercer. Monday morning, the story found daylight. Nancy sent me a screenshot from a private Facebook post by one of Karen's friends. No names, of course. Just enough detail for everyone from the wedding to understand. Heartbroken for a beautiful bride whose father chose drama over grace on her wedding night. Some men cannot let daughters become women. The comments did what comments do. They guessed, softened, sharpened, and passed judgment without having to look anyone in the eye. By noon, a customer I had rewired a bakery for texted, "Hope you're okay, Bob. Heard there was trouble at the wedding." Trouble. That was the word people use when they want the smoke without asking who lit the match. At 1:30, Susan called from her car. "I was suspended pending review," she said. I stood in the supply room at my shop with a box of outlet covers in my hand. Because of me? Because I confirmed an event note existed. They said I violated client confidentiality. I told you not to send anything you shouldn't. I didn't send the note. I sent a sentence. That was how power worked. Karen did not need to prove Susan had done anything terrible. She only needed the venue to see a difficult client and an employee who might tell the truth. "Let me help," I said. "Not today. Today I need to be mad without owing you." She ended the call before I could argue, and I stood there holding the box like it was a bill I had created. Emily came to the shop an hour later. She had never liked the smell of the place. Metal, dust, cardboard, coffee burned too long on the warmer. As a kid, she waited in my office after school and drew houses on invoice backs. That day, she stood by the counter in sunglasses, even though the room was dim. "People are talking," she said. "I know." Mark's mother is humiliated. Mark is getting calls. I'm getting calls. And now the venue manager might lose her job because of you. Because of you. I set the outlet covers down before I dropped them. Susan lost work because she told the truth. She should not have been involved. She was involved when your husband's family used her staff to remove me. Emily flinched at husband. The wedding ring on her finger looked too bright under the shop lights. Mark says Mercer can sue him if the funds don't post. Did Mark show you the agreement? He said it's complicated. Emily. Dad, stop saying my name like I'm stupid. That hit its mark because part of me had wanted to. Not because she was stupid, because I was terrified she had chosen not to know. She took off the sunglasses. Her eyes were swollen. If this ruins us before we even start, everyone will say I married wrong and my father made sure I paid for it. For the first time since the wedding, I saw how Mark's danger had become hers. I took out my phone and showed her the screenshots. Nancy's witness text, Susan's limited message, Mark's cropped Mercer email, the dead listing link, and my canceled wire timestamp.
Emily read them standing at my counter. Her mouth changed at the event note. It changed again at Mercer's name.
He said Mercer was part of the property side, she said. Then Mark can show you the property paper. She handed the phone back like it had become hot. If I ask right now, he'll say I'm choosing you. No, he'll say you're choosing facts. Emily laughed once, sharp and tired. You make that sound easy. I did not tell her it was easy. It wasn't. A lie inside a new marriage has furniture around it. Flowers, photos, guests, thank you cards, a mother-in-law who knows when to cry. Pull one thing out, and the room can fall on you.
Ask him in writing, I said. Text, not a kitchen argument. Ask for the agreement, the listing, and why Mercer needed confirmation before the reception ended.
You're coaching me against my husband. I'm coaching you not to sign fear. She put her sunglasses back on, but not before I saw tears. I don't know which one of you is trying to control me. That was the midpoint damage. Not the Facebook post, not Susan's suspension, not Mark's voicemail. My own daughter stood in my shop and could not tell whether her father was protecting her or punishing her. That evening, Mark sent his countermove through Emily, exactly as I expected and still hated. She forwarded me a text from him. Your dad is escalating. If he contacts Mercer again, this becomes a legal and financial mess for us. I need you to tell him to stop before he ruins your name too. Below it, Emily had written, What does he mean, my name too? I answered, Ask him, in writing. She did. 10 minutes later, she sent me the reply. Mark wrote, Because your father made himself part of the commitment when he promised the funds. People know that. There it was. Not a home gift, not a clean down payment.
A represented commitment, now being pushed toward my daughter as reputation damage. Before I could call her, Susan texted again. They took me off next weekend too. I may be out. I gave her the number of a hotel manager I knew from a conference room remodel and wrote, This is work contact, not pity. You know events. He needs someone who can keep a room from burning down. She replied with one word. Later. The word stung because it was fair. Truth had cost her before it helped her. That price belonged in my ledger too. At 9, Nancy called and said Karen had told 2 relatives I was holding Emily hostage financially. I wrote the phrase down. Not because I believed it, but because lies have serial numbers if you record them early enough. Emily came back to the shop the next morning, not inside this time. She stood by my truck in the lot with both arms folded against the wind. I asked him, she said. And? He said he was trying to protect me from details that would scare me. Did he send the agreement? She shook her head. Did he explain Mercer? He said Mercer is a bridge. People are not bridges, Em. Money is not a bridge unless both sides know where it lands. She looked toward the street. Karen says you like this, that you finally get to prove Mark isn't good enough. That one almost got through. A father can be right and still look ugly holding the proof. Do you believe her? Emily wiped under one eye with her thumb. I don't know what I believe. I know my wedding is already something people whisper about. My husband says you're destroying us, and you have a folder like I'm a case. I wanted to say, you're my daughter, not a case. But the folder existed. The screenshots existed. The fact that I needed them existed. I love you, I said. I will not send the money. She nodded once, like a judge had ruled against her, and got into her car. When she drove away, I knew Mark had won that hour. He had made the truth feel like another pressure on her chest. He had taken my refusal, which should have protected her, and turned it into proof that I was the one making her choose. That was the damage I could not fix with a screenshot. Alan Mercer did not sound like a villain when he called again. That made him more useful. He asked to meet at a coffee shop near the county recorder's office, not at his office and not at my shop. Neutral table, he said. I don't need drama. I need facts. I almost told him my daughter's wedding had used up my drama budget, but I drove there instead. Mercer was in his late 50s, clean shirt, no tie, a leather notebook beside his coffee. He waited for me to offer my hand first.
I am not here to collect from you, he said after we sat. I want that clear. I asked why he had called me at all. Mercer opened the notebook and slid a printed email across the table. Mark's name sat at the top. Saturday deadline. Amount, $75,000. Purpose, missed payment cure under a private repayment agreement. Mark Whitman sent my office a confirmation screenshot with your name attached to the funding source, Mercer said. When the funds did not arrive, he said the bride's father got emotional and reversed family money. There it was, plain enough to read. I read the purpose line twice and asked what payment Mark had missed. Mercer tapped the page once. A private repayment date. This paper does not mention your daughter, it mentions Mark. The words did not change when I read them again. Mark had not needed my money to secure a home for Emily. He had needed my daughter to secure my money for Mark. I asked to keep the page. Mercer pulled it back with 2 fingers and said no. He would let me read it, and he would confirm he had received a representation that my funds would be used, but he would not give me his file. That was fair. It also meant I had less than I wanted. A lawyer could call it incomplete. Mark could call it hearsay. Karen could call it harassment. Still, the root had shape now. Mark, Mercer, Saturday deadline, cure payment, my name attached as funding. Why warn me? I asked. Because I don't like being told a family contribution is clean when the family member on the money side does not understand the use, Mercer said. It makes collection messy. Collection. The word put a cold edge on the table. Mercer closed the notebook and made the limit clear. Mark owed money. Mercer expected Mark to handle it. If Mark had used my daughter's wedding to solve that problem, that was between my family and Mark. The meeting lasted less than 15 minutes, but it changed every call that had come before it. In the parking lot, I wrote down every phrase before it blurred. Missed payment cure. Private repayment agreement. Representation, not your daughter. I emailed the notes to myself with the time and location. Then I texted Emily one careful line. Ask Mark what missed payment cure means. Do not say I met Mercer first. She read it after 40 minutes and called at 6 from outside. Traffic moved behind her. Wind hit the phone. She had asked Mark. His first answer had not been an answer. He had asked where she heard that phrase. When she said it was in one of his messages, he got angry and accused her of letting me poison the marriage. Then Karen took the phone. Emily repeated Karen's words in a flat voice, as if reading from a bad card. Men like me hated not being needed. Men like me would rather see a daughter divorced than admit another man understood money better. I asked whether Emily believed that. She did not say yes. She said Mark would not show her the agreement. That was the first clean crack. Emily was outside their apartment because she did not want him hearing her. I started to tell her to stay there, then caught myself and asked instead. She stayed on the line. Mark had called the repayment language routine and said everyone used it. I asked whether he explained why her home money would cover his missed payment. This time she answered with one word. No. Mark called me 15 minutes later, already past politeness. He knew I had met Mercer. I asked whether he had finally shown Emily the agreement. He said I had no right. I asked whether I had no right to know where my $75,000 was going. He shifted into the voice he used when he wanted a room to think he was the calm one. It was temporary, he said, a bridge. He had a receivable coming in. Once the condo assignment closed, everything would have been clean. Emily's name is not on Mercer's paper, I said, because I was handling it before marriage, to protect her. The word protect had done a lot of dirty work that week. Mark had protected Emily from documents, protected her from questions, protected her from her own father standing to speak. I asked whether he had protected her by having security remove me. He said he had protected her from me blowing up the deal. The deal or your debt? I asked. He went quiet long enough for me to hear a cabinet close on his end. Then he tried the line that was meant to put the knife in my hand. If I kept pushing, Emily would lose everything before she even started. I told him to send her the agreement. He said no. Not later. Not after things calmed down. No. That no did more for the truth than Mercer's paper had. Mark could still dress up a missed repayment. He could not explain why his new wife was not allowed to see the document her father was supposed to fund. When he said I had promised, I gave him the only clean sentence I had. I had promised help for my daughter. I had not promised to cure his private debt. He hung up before I could tell whether Emily was in the room. A minute later, her text arrived. He won't show me. He says if I trust him, I won't need to see it. I read that sentence 3 times. It was the wedding sentence again in different clothes. Trust me enough to stay blind. I wrote back, come over if you need quiet. No money talk unless you start it. She did not answer, but an hour later my doorbell rang. Emily stood on my porch with no purse, no coat, and her phone in her hand like proof she was not imagining things. She asked why I had met Mercer without telling her first. I told her I needed enough truth to ask one question without guessing. The question was simple. If Mark had told her before the wedding that my money was needed to cure his private debt, would she have asked me to send it? Emily opened her mouth, closed it, and looked down at her ring. That was the first answer that mattered. Inside, I made coffee because my hands needed work. She stood by the counter and read Mark's texts again. This time, she did not defend them out loud. She said she did not know what to do. I told her she did not have to decide that night, but she had to stop letting him decide what she was allowed to know. The money route was not fully exposed yet. I still did not have Mercer's file. But Mark had lost the cleanest thing he had, Emily's willingness to confuse secrecy with protection. Emily did not sleep in the guest room that first night. She sat at my kitchen table until almost 1 in the morning with her phone between both hands, reading Mark's messages until the words stopped looking like English. I made coffee I did not want and put water beside her. I did not ask whether she was leaving him. A father can lose a daughter with one sentence after spending all week trying to save her. At 12:37, Mark called. Emily stared at the screen until it almost went dark, then hit speaker. He asked where she was. When she said she was at my house, his voice tightened. He told her to come home because both mothers were worried, and this was exactly what I wanted. Emily did not defend me. She asked for the agreement. The line went quiet. Then Karen's voice came from farther away, not on the phone at first. Tell her not to let him isolate her. Emily's face changed because Karen had said it casually, as if Emily were a door Mark needed to close. Mark came back louder and called the cure payment temporary financing language. Emily told him to help her understand it. He said not over the phone. She told him to email it. Karen's voice sharpened in the background. If she starts asking like him, use the divorce word. He'll panic. Mark said, Mom, stop. But too late. Emily looked at me. I did not move. I wanted her to know I had heard it, and I wanted her to know I would not take the moment from her. She did not turn against him in that second. She looked sick, then angry, then ashamed of being angry. Her hand stayed on the phone because some part of her still wanted Mark to explain it in a way that did not ruin everything. Emily asked what Karen meant by divorce word. Mark used her name in the warning tone people use when a private plan slips into public air. Emily asked whether he had told his mother to use her marriage to scare me back into paying. He said no, too fast. Then Emily asked the question that mattered. Why was I removed from the wedding? Mark said I was about to make a scene. Emily said I had a card. Mark said I was standing up in front of everyone. Emily said the DJ had called me. Mark lost polish. Because the DJ had the wrong timeline. The sentence carried its own confession. There had been a right timeline, and the right timeline did not include her father. Emily said, You knew. Mark answered that he knew I was unpredictable with money and pride. I had been called many things on job sites. Cheap, stubborn, old school, impossible. That new phrase had been built for Emily's ears. She ended the call without saying goodbye. For a while, the kitchen held only the refrigerator hum and both of us breathing. Then she said they had not thought of me as her dad. They had thought of me as a problem to manage until the money cleared. I said nothing because she had finally said the thing herself. Emily folded her arms on the table and put her forehead down like she was 12 again after a school fight. I did not touch her shoulder. Comfort given too fast can feel like a receipt. She admitted she had been ashamed, not only of me, but of needing me. Mark's family had made her feel she could step into another version of herself. Better restaurants, better people, a house before 30, a mother-in-law who knew which fork went where. I asked whether I was the old version. Emily lifted her head and said I was the bill for the old version.
That hurt because it was clean. She cried without covering her face and said every time I helped, she felt grateful and small. Mark made her feel chosen. Karen made her feel polished. Emily thought if she could get through the wedding without me saying something to Bob Miller, maybe she could become that woman. I made her say the ugly part. She had let them make me embarrassing. She nodded when I told her she had. I did not pad the truth, and she did not ask me to. At 8 the next morning, Mark arrived with flowers. He stood in the driveway and called Emily on video so the apology would have a frame. I watched from the living room window while she stepped outside in my old sweatshirt, arms folded against the cold. Mark held the bouquet like a prop. His hair was perfect. His face was not. He talked for 12 minutes. I saw the shape even without every word. Hand to chest, hand toward her, hand toward my house, phone lifted as proof. Then he took a folder from his car. Emily did not take it. When she came back inside, she left the flowers on the porch. Mark had not brought the Mercer agreement. He had brought a budget, a plan, and a promise to separate their finances from Karen after things calmed down. On the debt, he had only said he had sources. When Emily asked which sources, he would not say. I looked at the flowers through the window, white roses, expensive and useless in the cold. Emily sat down and pulled the sweatshirt sleeves over her hands. She had told him she would not live on "I'll explain later" anymore. It was a small sentence. It cost her more than shouting would have. Before lunch, she wrote Mark one text, while I stood across the kitchen and did not help with the wording. Send me the Mercer agreement and any document where my father is listed as a funding source. I need it by 6 tonight. Mark answered 20 minutes later. If you put this in writing, you're choosing a fight we may not come back from. Emily read it, set the phone down, and said the threat had finally arrived without perfume on it. She forwarded the exchange to her own email and to a new folder on her laptop. That was the first record she made for herself, not for me. It mattered because the truth had stopped being my folder and started becoming her decision. That afternoon, she asked whether I could forgive her. I was washing 2 mugs at the sink. I turned off the water because running water gives a man a place to hide. I told her, not today. Then I told her I wanted to, but wanting was not the same thing. She asked what to do. I told her she had to decide what kind of adult she was when nobody was paying her way out. It was harsh, and it was also the first useful thing I had said to her in years. I had spent too long answering fear with money, guilt with money, distance with money. Mark had not invented that weakness. He had found it unlocked in my house. Emily stayed one more night. I gave her the guest room and did not ask whether she had called a lawyer, canceled thank you cards, or taken off the ring. Those decisions had to belong to her, or they would become another version of my control. Before she went upstairs, she stopped in the hall and said she was sorry she had made me leave. The sentence was not big enough for the ballroom, the guard's hand, the music behind the doors, or the call about the wire. No sentence could be. I told her I knew. She waited for more. I did not give it. That was the hardest boundary of the week. Not the canceled money, not Mercer, not Mark. It was letting my daughter feel the full weight of an apology I could not yet accept. I did not post screenshots. I did not call wedding guests. I did not write a long family message with the truth laid out like a courtroom exhibit. That would have felt good for 10 minutes and cost Emily for years. Instead, I called a lawyer I had used once for a contract dispute and paid for one clean letter. It said any further claim that I was intoxicated, confused, disruptive, or financially abusing my daughter would be answered with preserved records. The list included the DJ timeline, the venue incident note, witness statements, wire timestamp, Mark's messages, and the Mercer funding representation. The letter did not accuse Mark of a crime. It did not threaten Karen's friends. It did one thing I understood from construction. It marked the line before more damage crossed it.
I emailed it to Karen and Mark at 4:12 p.m. and copied Emily because secrets had done enough work in that family. Karen answered first. "This is unnecessary and cruel."
I wrote back, "It is necessary because the word confused was unnecessary and cruel." Mark did not answer by email. He called Emily. She let it go to voicemail, then played it at my table. His voice was soft now, the apology voice from the driveway polished thinner. "Em, your father is turning this into a legal war. I can still fix the finances if he stops." Emily saved the voicemail. She did not look at me for permission. The next morning, she went to the apartment to get clothes. I drove her, but stayed in the parking lot because if I walked in, Mark would make the room about me again. Emily carried an empty duffel and the new folder she had made for herself. She came back 20 minutes later without the duffel full. Her face had gone still. "He left a letter on the counter," she said. She handed me a photo, not the paper. Good. She was learning not to remove things Mark could claim she took. The letter was from Mercer to Mark, dated the day after the wedding, demanding a cure payment plus a fee. The amount was larger than $75,000 now. Mark had circled a due date and written, "Call Robert," in the margin. Emily had taken the picture beside a coffee mug so the kitchen counter and date on her phone showed in the reflection. "I didn't know to do that a week ago," she said. "You know now." She stared through the windshield. "My wedding gift was supposed to plug a hole he had already dug." "Yes. And he let me make you the problem." I did not soften it. "Yes." She put the phone in her folder and finally took off her ring. Not dramatically, no speech. She slid it into the zipper pocket of her purse, like evidence she was not ready to throw away and not willing to wear. Mark came down before she closed the car door. He crossed the lot fast, no jacket, one hand raised like he was approaching a customer who might walk out of a showroom. Emily locked the door from inside. He knocked on the glass. "Em, come on." "Don't do this in front of him." She lowered the window 2 inches. "Send the agreement." "You took a picture of my mail." "I took a picture of a letter about debt you tied to my father's money." Mark looked at me then, and the Groom face disappeared. "You got what you wanted." I kept both hands on the wheel. "No, what I wanted was to give my daughter a wedding gift without being thrown out of her wedding." He leaned closer to the window. "If Mercer moves, this gets ugly." Emily answered before I could. "Then it gets ugly with the truth in the room." That sentence changed the parking lot. Mark had been ready for my anger. He had been ready for my money. He had not prepared for Emily speaking without asking him which version was allowed. We drove away with him standing behind the car, phone already at his ear. I guessed Karen. Emily guessed the same because she said, "She's going to say I was hysterical." Maybe. Emily opened her folder and saved Mark's parking lot line in a note. "If Mercer moves, this gets ugly." Then she added, "He said it after I asked for the agreement." The clean story was dying one ordinary note at a time. That afternoon, Susan called back. "Your hotel contact reached out," she said. "I have an interview Friday." "Good." "I still don't want pity." "Then don't take pity. Take a better room." She laughed once, tired but real. "You always talk like a contractor." Rooms either hold or they don't. After the call, I forwarded my lawyer's letter to the hotel manager, only after Susan gave permission. Not as a complaint, but as context. She had been suspended after refusing to falsify the sequence of an event. He replied that he had worked weddings for 20 years and knew exactly what that meant. That small repair mattered. Susan had paid for a truth that was not hers. I could not undo the suspension, but I could make sure she was not left standing outside the venue alone. Karen answered the lawyer's letter that evening through Mark's father, a man who had barely spoken at the wedding. His email was short. "We all regret the misunderstanding. Please ask Robert to stop threatening family." I replied once. "There is no threat. There is a boundary. Stop calling me confused, unstable, or financially abusive, and I will not send the records to anyone who has not asked." He did not answer. The family chat went quiet within an hour. No apology came. I did not expect one.
Silence was not justice, but it was less poison in Emily's air. Mark lost the rescue money first. Karen lost the clean room second. Emily asked about the condo 3 days later. She did not ask for it. That was new. She asked whether I had really been planning to give her a place someday. I opened the blue folder at the kitchen table and showed her the deed, the insurance, and the lease. Then I closed it again. I was going to move it to you after the wedding, I said. Her face tightened. And now? Now we wait a year. She nodded, but hurt crossed her eyes before she could hide it. I need to know you can live without turning every fear into a call to me, I said. I need to know help won't become a leash, yours or mine. Pay your rent, handle the separation, work, ask me for dinner, not rescue. Then we talk again. You don't trust me. Not with money. Not yet. She looked at the folder and then at the ring in the zipper pocket of her purse. That's fair. It cost her to say that. It cost me not to soften it. That afternoon, Emily emailed Mark one final request for the Mercer agreement and copied a divorce attorney's intake address she had found herself. Mark replied with one sentence, "You are making a mistake you will regret." Emily forwarded it to her folder and wrote back, "Maybe, but it will be mine." That was the first consequence that did not come from me. Emily moved into a one-bedroom apartment over a dentist's office 2 weeks after the wedding. The stairs smelled like carpet cleaner and somebody's microwave lunch. The kitchen had one drawer that stuck unless you lifted it first. She signed the lease herself and texted me a photo only after the deposit cleared from her own account. I wanted to offer money. I wanted it so badly my hand actually opened the banking app before I caught myself. Then I closed it and wrote, "Looks solid. Check the smoke detector." She answered with a picture of herself on a chair pressing the test button. The alarm screamed in the video, and she laughed with one hand over her ear. That laugh did not fix anything. It did mark a first repair that had not come from my wallet. Mark sent messages for another week. Some were soft. I miss my wife. Some were sharp. You and your father are turning a temporary issue into a divorce. Karen sent one email to Emily about vows, embarrassment, and how modern women quit too easily. Emily printed that email and put it in her folder. Then she went to work. The salon had become unbearable. Too many clients asked about the wedding. She found an entry-level assistant position with a small interior design firm that did model apartments and local restaurant refreshes. The pay was worse. The hours were steadier. Nobody there knew Karen. On her first day, she texted me a photo of a sample board, tile, paint, cheap brass hardware, 3 fabric swatches. I wrote, "That drawer in your kitchen needs a new slide." She replied, "I know. I'm buying one Friday." Friday came with her first paycheck from the design firm. It was not much. She sent me a screenshot with the cents blacked out and wrote, "Smaller than your wedding wire by a ridiculous amount." I answered, "Your own money is never ridiculous." She did not ask for rent help. That was the victory. She did ask whether I could come over Sunday and show her how to replace the drawer slide if she bought the part. I said yes, then sat with the phone in my hand because I could feel the old habit looking for a way in. "Bring tools, not a check," I wrote to myself on a sticky note and put it on my dashboard. Sunday, I brought a drill, a level, and a pack of screws from my shop. Emily had bought the slide herself, the wrong size but close enough to teach the lesson. We drove to the hardware store and she paid at the register while I stood 2 steps back. The cashier asked if we needed a bag. Emily said no and carried the part herself. It was such a small thing that I almost missed it. Then I realized small was the point. Her new life was not going to arrive as one grand apology. It would be built out of receipts she paid, questions she asked, and parts she carried without handing them to me. The divorce paperwork started with an intake call, not a courthouse scene. Emily sat at her tiny kitchen table with a notebook, while the attorney asked dates, addresses, shared accounts, and whether any debts had been opened in her name. I sat on the couch because she had asked me to be there, but I did not answer for her. When the attorney asked about financial pressure, Emily looked at me once, and then spoke into the phone herself. She said Mark had tried to use my promised wedding money for a private cure payment. She said she had not signed that agreement. She said she had asked for documents and he had refused. After the call, Mark texted, "Without your dad, you have nothing." Emily stared at it for a long time. Then she took a screenshot, emailed it to her attorney, and wrote back, "Then I should learn what I have." I wanted to hug her. I did not. She was still shaking, and I knew the difference between comfort and taking over had become thin. Mark sent one more line. "You will regret choosing him." Emily answered, "I am choosing me." Then she blocked him for the night. Not forever, not dramatically, just for the night. The phone went face down beside the new drawer slide, and she asked me whether the screw should go in straight or slightly angled. "Straight," I said, "if the frame is square." "And if it isn't?" "Then you learn what is crooked before you force it." Susan got the hotel job the following week. She called me from the parking lot after the interview and said they had asked how she handled difficult clients. "I told them the truth," she said. "I said I keep records, I keep staff calm, and I don't let money turn a false version into procedure." Sounds like a good answer.
It was your answer, too. No, mine had more cussing in it. She laughed, and this time the laugh stayed. The job paid a little less than the venue at first, but the manager promised event lead work after a month. Susan said she could live with that, because the place did not smell like Karen Whitman's perfume. I told Emily. She sent Susan a short message from her own phone. "I'm sorry my wedding cost you. Thank you for seeing what happened." Susan answered, "Make it cost something useful." Emily printed that message and taped it inside her folder. Not because it was evidence, because it was a command. At work, Emily's supervisor gave her a small task choosing finishes for a model kitchenette. She stayed late, sent me no photos until she had already turned it in, and then called to say the supervisor liked her second choice better than her first. "Did you argue?" I asked. "No. I asked why." That was new too. A month after the wedding, Emily walked past the venue on her lunch break. She did not plan it. The design firm had sent her to photograph a restaurant facade 2 blocks away. The venue doors were open for another event, and music spilled onto the sidewalk. She did not call me from the curb. She did not ask me to come get her. She went back to the office, finished the photo set, took the bus home, and wrote me an email that evening. "Dad, I passed the place today. There was another wedding. I heard music and remembered you standing by those doors. I don't know the right way to apologize for making you leave. Maybe there is no right way. I think the only honest thing is not to call it a misunderstanding. I told you to go because I wanted to be easy for people who were using both of us. I am ashamed of that. I am not asking for money, the condo, or help with the divorce. If you can someday, I would like to have tea and not talk about transfers." I read it at my kitchen table with my work boots still on. The house was quiet. The blue folder sat in the desk drawer. The $75,000 sat in my account. Neither one moved. I did not answer right away. First, I forwarded her email to no one. That mattered. Some truths are not evidence. They are a door. Then I wrote, "Sunday. Tea is here. No money talk." She answered in less than a minute. "Thank you, Dad." I looked at the words and understood I had not forgiven her. But for the first time since the ballroom doors closed, I wanted Sunday to come. Emily came Sunday with a paper bag from the grocery store bakery. Not flowers, not a card, not papers. Just oatmeal cookies in a clear plastic box with a red discount sticker she had not tried to peel off. She put them on my kitchen table and said, "I didn't know what to bring when I'm not asking for anything." That almost broke me. I took 2 mugs from the cabinet and set water to boil. Cookies work. She sat in the chair she had used since middle school. The same chair where she once did algebra with tears on her cheeks. The same chair where she had asked me not to talk about work before the wedding. Nothing in the kitchen had changed except the way both of us understood it. For 20 minutes, we talked about ordinary things. Her apartment drawer now opened. Susan had started at the hotel. Nancy wanted Emily to call but had promised not to push. Emily's supervisor had let her choose paint for a bathroom nobody important would see, and she was proud anyway. No Mark, no Mercer,
No wire. Then she looked at the desk drawer where she knew the blue folder sat. "I'm not asking," she said. "I know. I just hate that I thought I could get a new life by letting someone make you smaller." The kettle clicked off. I poured the water because if I stood still, the sentence would hit too hard. "I helped build that," I said. Emily looked up. "Not Mark, not Karen, the wallet part," I said. I had trained her to come to me when something had to be fixed. I had trained myself to feel useful only when I could pay, drive, repair, or sign. When she was scared, I reached for a solution before I reached for a conversation. She started to object, but I raised one hand. "Let me finish. I don't blame myself for what they did. Mark chose that. Karen chose that. You chose your part, but my part was real too." Emily held the mug with both hands. "I don't want your help to feel like debt." "Then don't spend it that way." It was not a gentle answer. It was the answer she needed. We opened the cookies. They were too sweet, the kind that leave sugar on your fingers. Emily ate one slowly, then laughed because the bottom stuck to the plastic tray. "I could have baked," she said. "You hate baking." "I know. I almost did it anyway because I thought store cookies looked lazy." "Store cookies work." She smiled, and for a second I saw the girl from before Mark, before Karen, before the ballroom. Then the second passed. That was all right. I did not want the old Emily back. The old Emily had needed too many quiet lies to survive.
The formal ending took longer and looked smaller than people expect. Mercer pursued Mark, not me. I heard that from Emily's attorney after Mark tried to claim the wedding gift had been committed family funding. The attorney asked for my written statement. I gave dates, screenshots, and one sentence. I never authorized the wire and never agreed to fund Mark Whitman's private obligation. Mark stopped using my name after that. The divorce filing went through the ordinary way. Forms, waiting period, calls Emily hated. One meeting where Mark tried to sound wounded and practical at the same time. Karen did not attend, but her phrases did. Family embarrassment, influence, temporary misunderstanding. Emily wrote them down and let her attorney answer. The $75,000 stayed in my account. I used part of the interest, not the principal, to replace 2 old service vans at the shop. That choice felt strange. For years, large money had been filed in my head under Emily. Spending even a piece of its growth on my own business felt like taking my name back from the role of emergency fund. The condo stayed in my name. The blue folder stayed in the drawer. Once a month, Emily paid her rent and sent no proof unless I asked. And I did not ask. That was how trust started, not with declarations, but with a silence nobody filled with a transfer. People like clean endings. They want the daughter to understand everything, the father to forgive, the bad man to vanish, and the money to become a lesson with a ribbon around it. Real life is stingier than that. I still heard the ballroom doors sometimes. A commercial with wedding music could do it. A white dress in a store window could do it. Once, at a hardware supplier, a young man in a suit adjusted his tie the way Mark had, and I had to walk out before I bought the breaker panel I came for. Emily knew. She did not ask me to be over it. That became part of her apology, too. One Sunday, 3 months after the wedding, she came by with a drawer slide she had installed wrong, on purpose, she claimed, because she wanted me to see whether I would correct her before saying hello. I did correct her. Then I said hello. She laughed, and this time neither of us pretended the test was only about hardware. We ate lunch from takeout containers. She told me the design firm had let her handle a small client call. She had been nervous, had over-prepared, had asked 3 direct questions instead of pretending she understood. The client liked her. "Turns out asking isn't fatal," she said. "Expensive lesson." Yeah. The word sat between us. Expensive. Not in dollars. In music behind doors, in Susan's suspension, in a ring zipped into a purse, in a father saying, "Not today." I did not forgive her that afternoon either. I did move another chair closer to the table before she came the next week. The last time I opened the bank app for that wire, it was only to delete the old draft.
The recipient line with Alan Mercer's name still sat there, waiting like a trap that had missed. I stared at the amount, $75,000, and remembered Mark asking whether it had cleared before he asked where I was. Then I deleted it. No bell rang, no courtroom closed, no one from the wedding called to say they understood. Karen never apologized. Mark never sent the agreement. Emily never got the clean start she had wanted. What she got was harder and more useful. A lease in her name. A paycheck that looked small and felt real. An attorney who spoke to her, not over her. A father who would help with a drawer slide but not buy silence. Tea without a wire behind it. What I got was not victory. Victory is too bright a word for watching your daughter learn inside the wreckage of her own wedding. I got a boundary I should have drawn years earlier. I got my money back from the roll of proof.
I got a daughter who, for the first time in a long time, asked for a chair instead of a rescue.
I still love her. I still remember the guard's hand on my elbow. Families break when people demand that only one truth be allowed at the table. That Sunday, when she left, she took the empty cookie box to the trash and washed both mugs before I could reach the sink. At the door, she said, "Same time next week?" I said, "Call first." She nodded. Not hurt, not offended, just hearing the boundary. After she drove away, I stood in the kitchen and looked at the chair I had moved closer. I did not feel like a hero. I felt like a man who had finally stopped paying admission to disappear from his own daughter's life.
If this story stayed with you, please like the video and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, could you sit down with your child again after being treated like a wallet at their wedding, if they came back asking for conversation instead of money? Thank you for listening to the end.